Okay, I asked this to everyone, but what is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you on the job or in like a work setting?
So it used to be when I was a hostess or even as a manager and you're like, oh, hey, a party of three, perfect, follow me right this way. And then I would like turn and promptly walk into something and they're all like staring at you. And then you're like, it's like,
Trying to play it
yeah,
off.
yeah. But I would say the most embarrassing thing happened to me recently. We had a big wine tasting with a really famous winemaker, and there were a lot of people there, and people have been parking in our parking lot that's like in the back through this little alley, and they're not supposed to. And it's like been this like ongoing thing, and I've been very disgruntled about it. And someone told me that it was a convoluted situation, but someone said, oh yeah, somebody parked in this spot after I was trying to hold it for somebody who was attending the event. And they were like, yeah. And then they got up and they walked through the alley. They didn't even come in. So I was like, fuck this. I'm towing them. I'm towing them. So I towed the car, had the car towed.
Oh
And I'm like running
no.
around trying to get everything ready. It's like this stressful situation. Like we're doing the tasting. And then in the middle of the tasting, I said to the person who I was trying to hold the spot for, I was like, yeah, I got that fucking car towed. I was like, I'm so sick of this. And she goes, oh my God. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. She's like, they're here. She's like, I don't know why they walked around through the alley. She's like, but they're here. They're in that booth over there.
Oh
So
my
I had
gosh.
to go up to them and be like, do you have a red four-door Audi?
No.
And they were like, yeah, why?
You're like,
I was like,
we're
oh
having it
my
brought
God.
in, especially for
Yes.
you around
I
the
had to, like,
front.
put them in an Uber, hand them the cash, like it was like this whole mess, and it
No.
was a nightmare.
Oh no, that's definitely an embarrassing story. Thank you for that. That's a good one. Okay, so I also have to ask about money. What like I have no idea what like a sommelier makes. I mean, I feel like the word sommelier is hard to define because that's not the job, right? Is you can be like someone that works at a high-end restaurant as a sommelier. You can be a sommelier for your own company where you go do tastings for people, right?
Sure.
How does that differ?
It's a great question. So absolutely. And again, going back to just sort of like having that accreditation, it sort of gives you validity, and people will now trust you if you're starting your own wine sales company or events company or that kind of thing. But it is a little confusing because yes, like, does that mean you are a floor som? That job certainly exists. Like you said, it's going to be more at a high-end restaurant, like a Michelin tier restaurant, like these kinds of places where they can afford to have
Hire
somebody who is
specific.
dedicated just to come to your table and tell you about the wine list. That those restaurants generally are also going to have a wine list that looks like an insane binder
Crazy.
because they need someone who's dedicated to that because there's so many wines to choose from. So those jobs, it's funny because in the restaurant industry, I always think about things in shifts.
Okay.
Like, I don't think about like a yearly salary. I'm like, okay, if it's a busy Saturday, you're going to make this much money
Yeah,
because
that's
forever, like
easy.
if you've been a
Yeah.
server or a bartender, people know it's like, oh yeah, you're like, okay, weekend shift, you make like $200 and then on a night shift. So I've actually never been a floor som. I've been a server for years. I've been a manager who ran wine lists for a long time. And now I am a partner in 2 wine bars. So I don't know if things have changed since COVID or, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But I think generally speaking, you're going to be a part of a tip pool. And you're probably, like I said, looking at like $200 on a busy night, 150. And then so that you can kind of think of those people as wine servers. Like that's
Okay.
what they do. Their job is to know everything about the wine list, and their job is to find the perfect bottle for you or glasses for you or pairings for you. But it is kind of like a server.
And they get tipped out as like this-
Exactly. Yeah. And I
Okay.
would say that's a generalization. I'm sure there are some places where they're salaried.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, do you think, yeah, like I went to a restaurant in New York and we got the specific one where the sommelier comes out and she pairs every single like food that you eat with a certain wine and she like explains it each time.
Yes.
Like, I feel like maybe she would have like, I mean, maybe she was like a manager of, and,
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of different. And then you kind of have these let's say like an independent restaurant structure where you're probably going to have more responsibilities than just the wine list, just because that's their budget.
Right.
It's going to be like, okay, you're the assistant general manager, or maybe you're the general manager and you do the wine list.
Yeah, but
and
like, can
so
like,
in those situations, those are going to be salaried positions. I would say
Okay.
just from my experience in Los Angeles right now, I would say those positions probably start at like 60,000 a year.
Okay.
And then can go up from there. If you're working at a super high end place, maybe you're closer to like 80.
Makes sense. If like, you know how there's master sommeliers and like these like there's names that people know. Obviously they make good money, I would assume.
For sure.
Right? They have to. Like, do they get paid to come taste certain things?
So with that, I mean, you can kind of think of it as like, so I'm a certified sommelier. I'm in the middle of studying for my advanced exam. That's coming up in April. So I took an exam to get into the advanced course. I took the advanced course. Now I'm going to take the actual exam. So I'm like halfway through that process. And so advanced is the 3rd level, and then master somm is the 4th level.
Wow.
When you do have that accreditation, it definitely comes with,
Clout.
They know everything. You can kind of think of it as having like a doctorate
in
wine. A master's maybe at the advanced level and then a doctorate at that level. They know fucking everything. It's crazy. I mean, their depth of knowledge is incredible. And as a result of that, they are going to be offered. There's also only like 150
there's only 100
or something in the United States.
Wow.
It says, I just looked it up, only 230 people have ever passed the master somm test.
Yes. And how does it say how many women? I think it's only like 30.
It's 198 men and 32 women.
Yeah, 32 women.
All right, who's going to be next?
You're going to be 33.
Yeah. So with that, it is. I mean, it is kind of an exclusive club, right?
Makes sense.
So those jobs are going to be, I would say the minimum after you've sort of finished that, you're going to be a brand ambassador for some high-end brands, right? Maybe a champagne house is going to hire you to be their United States ambassador. And like, these are more like sales positions. But, and I would say those are probably starting at 6 figures.
The people that work at wineries, they're not considered sommeliers, right? Like I've heard people say like, I'm a sommelier, and I'm like, oh cool, where do you work or what do you do? And they're like, oh, I work at this winery. And I'm like, and then they like end up telling me they've never taken a test in their life and they've only had that wine at the winery. They don't know anything else about wine, but they label themselves as a sommelier because it's just an easier way to explain that they work at a winery.
Sure.
Am I right in saying like they're full of shit, or is that rude?
Well, it's just like tricky because if somebody maybe is working in a tasting room and they're pouring you wine all day and they know those wines inside and out, their understanding of winemaking is probably going to be better than mine working in a restaurant. But maybe my understanding of, wines from around the world will be greater than their. So I don't, it's like apples and oranges.
Yeah, you're being nice.
It's kind of like going back. No, it's just kind of going back to the idea that like, just because you have a certification in something doesn't mean.
Right.
It's like the person who has 40 years of experience versus the person who crammed for a test for 2 years who knows more, right? Like the person with more experience. So I guess, I don't know. That's a tricky question. It's like maybe yes, but also maybe no. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like I've been to like the Safari Winery here. And like those people call themselves sommeliers. I'm like, I don't think you've ever like taken an actual course or test, but you do know this wine very well. Which
sure, and they're serving wine, and I think the technical definition is like someone who's serving wine. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I want to work at a tasting room. I just think the social aspect of that sounds so much fun. Okay. Is there anything that you feel like people should know about being a somm? Like as we wrap up, like anything that you like when people ask you like, what do you do for work? Do you say I'm a sommelier, or does that sound pretentious? Do you just say like I'm a partner at winery? Like,
I'm usually just like, it's funny that you say that because I always feel like I don't know how to answer that question. So I usually just say, oh, I have a couple of wine bars in the valley.
Oh, good. Yeah, that sounds great.
A couple of wine bars
but then they start going like, oh, can I come like try?
Yeah, which I'm like, yes, please do. The more business, the better.
Yeah.
But I think that you're right. The term sommelier can be confusing. But I just think that the world of wine is like any other industry. There are so many aspects to working in it. So I would just say if anybody's interested in it, just dive right in. Get Wine for Dummies is like my favorite like go-to. Let's start at the very beginning. It breaks it down in a really simple way. Wine Folly, which you mentioned,
I love that book.
Awesome. It's really
we bring
easy
it to wineries.
understand.
We look like so lame, but we bring it to wineries and we like flip through it as we're tasting. So we can like the other day I tasted one and I was like, oh, I wonder what these like are, and it said crushed gravel. And so now when I like sit, I'm like sort of like crushed gravel.
You're like, God, this wine is so gravelly.
It's so gravelly.